They're the best poker players in the world. And in the next 30 minutes, they'll help you become a better player. Led by the professor, Howard Lederer, FullTiltPoker.net has created an exclusive classroom to teach the strategies, techniques, and nuance that separate poker winners from losers. Joining Howard in studio today will be champion poker players Daniel Negreanu, Phil Gordon, Cloney Gowan, Phil Hellmuth, Annie Duke, and Antonio Esfandiari. It's a rare opportunity to learn from the best. FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
Everybody looking for that one tip or maybe a whole bunch of chips to help beat their buds at the poker table? Well, I don't have the chips. We do have the tips, as in plenty of them. As FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros, he's one of the best around, the professor, Howard Lederer. I am Chris Rose, and see, wouldn't you just like to go over there and just take those chips and use it against your buddies?
You know, there's not a seat open, but I'm next up.
Yeah, there's not a seat open with good reason. None of those guys want to sit next to you. But maybe at the end of the 26-week tutorial, everybody at home will say, you know what, Howard Lederer, come join us. Maybe they can beat you then.
They'll have a few more weapons in the bag.
Good. All right, well, today's topic, one of the most misunderstood by amateur players out there, it is the slow play. All right, Professor, help me out with the term slow play.
Well, really what we're referring to is the speed at which the chips get into the pot. And I'm not talking about physical speed like betting quickly or betting slowly. What I'm talking about is, are your chips going to get in quickly during the early part of the hand or during the late part of the hand? When you fast play a hand, you get your chips in early, you have a strong hand, you're making big raises before the flop, or you make a big raise on the flop and you think you have the best hand. When you play it slow, you're waiting till 4th Street, 5th Street to get your chips in, and maybe you're letting your opponents catch up a little bit.
But obviously the key is you have to have a great hand to do this, and then also
Absolutely.
You have to be able to afford to, you know, let your opponent catch up. You know, turn around and be like, hey, come on, get up here. And we do have a piece of tape where TJ Cloutier does this to perfection in the original Poker Superstars. All you guys are there, very aggressive players at the table.
Yes, and you know, he is playing against some very aggressive players at the Poker Superstars. He limps in with 2 nines, a nice play with a smallish pair like that. He flops the set of 9s. You see here he's flopped a set. And with these aggressive players, it's a pretty nice, solid play to let these guys hang themselves a little bit. And he hits a perfect card on the turn. He fills up. I make a small bet with my 9s. I'm thinking my hand could be good. Johnny Chan folds, and TJ just calls. He's giving me a chance to possibly fire at it again on the river, but he's also letting maybe Phil Ivey get in trouble here, thinking that he can steal a pot, and that's exactly what Phil Ivey tries to do. Comes around to me. Of course, I have an easy laydown. And now TJ moves all in, hoping that Phil Ivey has 3 5s. It turns out he doesn't, but he earned that extra raise. If he had raised me, Phil Ivey's going to fold right away with the Queen 10. And he slow played because he knew that pretty much no card could come up that could cost him the pot.
TJ Cloutier, very patient there. Not nearly as patient as Ted Forrest is in this clip against Christy Gazes. And really, that's the key to slow play. Stick to your game plan.
Stick to your game plan, but know when you really need to slow play to get action. In that earlier hand, TJ realized maybe Phil Ivey has a 5 and he can bust them. Here's a situation where Ted Forrest has 3 aces. There's really nothing left in the deck for Christy Gazes to have. So Ted checks on the flop. He checks on the turn, just giving Christy maximum chance to hit 2 pair.
Bingo.
That's exactly what she does here. She's now made the aces and queens. She checks the Ted, a nice check, not getting in too much trouble. Ted bets 9,000 here on the river into the $11,500 pot. And really, Christy can't do anything but pay him off. I can't see how she could have folded. He earned that 9,000. If he had bet at any point in that hand before the river, he doesn't make that 9,000.
But of course, we want to emphasize here, you can only slow play when you've got a great hand and you feel like it is the best hand at the table.
Notice these are 2 professionals, and in both situations where they slow played, their opponent had 0% chance to win the pot. TJ had the full house, and he checked. Ted had the 3 aces, and his opponent had no chance.
Is that the reason why when I play slow play against you, it hasn't worked yet?
Well, you know, if you...
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. You don't have to be modest or anything, Howard. That's all right. At the end of the 26 weeks, I'm gonna beat you at least in one hand. We're back with more, all right?
Still to come, stop losing with monster hands. The professor reveals a common mistake made by the amateur player. Plus, it's a family affair when Howard's sister, champion poker player Annie Duke, stops by to share a classic tell. But up next, brace yourself. Helmuth, Negreanu, Gordon, and Gowan assemble for an all-star roundtable. This is not for the faint of heart.
I'm talking final tables. I haven't seen him at one recently.
Okay.
So stick around and learn from the pros.
FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros. Brought to you by FullTiltPoker.net. Learn, chat, and play with the pros.
We continue to have a whole lot of fun, FullTiltPoker.net styles. We continue to learn from the pros, and everybody at home, put on your thinking cap, because joining us on the roundtable next to the Professor Howard Lederer is Daniel Negreanu, 2004 Poker Player of the Year. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Not too much. Just excited about the hockey season.
Yeah?
Not the Leafs, though. Not looking so good.
Where's your Matt Sundin jersey?
Matt Sundin, I only wear that for special occasions, final tables.
This is not
FSN.
All right, look, did you see who you're sitting next to? How could it not be more special
I'm talking
than this?
final tables. I haven't seen him at one recently.
Okay. He is, though, a poker icon, Phil Helmuth. Phil, good to see you.
Introduce me that way. Let's go to Phil Gordon.
Okay, Phil Gordon, of
I'm
course.
not a poker icon.
Well, we know you from Celebrity Poker, hosting that, but also a champion on the WPT Tour. Good to see you again.
Always a pleasure.
And also Cloney Gowan. First onto the scene in 2003. Howard's not going to hold it against you that you beat up on his sister Annie Duke and also Jennifer Harmon back then, but thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, guys, today's topic, slow play. Words of advice for the amateur out there, Daniel.
Well, the one thing I think you need to be careful of, especially when playing Texas Hold'em, is it's really risky to slow play with mediocre hands. You can slow play really, really strong hands, but too often I think people think they have top pair, a pair of jacks or something, and they think, ooh, I'm going to slow play. There's so many dangerous cards that could come that I would say you want to be aggressive. That's the way to win.
Do you get too cute out there, Cloney? Can that happen sometimes?
I think that I agree with Daniel 100% there. You only really want to slow play a really strong hand that doesn't have a shot of getting. You want to give them enough where they can catch up with you, but not where they're gonna beat you. So I agree with you.
I'd say the guy at this table who likes to slow play the most and has the most guts about doing it is Phil. I've seen him slow play hands that I wouldn't even dream of doing.
You watched the Heads Up Championship recently, and it was very interesting because, Chris Ferguson, I'd limp in with queens, he'd move all in, and I'd jump out of my chair. I call, and I won that pot. Same thing with nines. I beat him. Those were the final two hands of two of our matches. And then Gabe Kaplan's announcing, and he's like, oh, boy, that was a great play. That was a great play. But whenever I slow played like a pair of jacks and lost, he'd say, oh, I don't know, that was pretty risky play. And that's traditional poker thinking right there. That if you're going to be slow playing with big pairs, you're really setting yourself up to lose with the big pairs. And so there's this fine balance. You want to give people enough rope, but not too much rope. And it's very difficult to do, and I rely on my reading of people when I start slow playing hands. If I know that they've beaten my strong hand, then I can fold my hand. So I can slow play hands, and then I love it when they've checked to me on the end, and now I know that the hand I've slow played is good. Now it's just a matter of choose the amount you want to get paid off.
Slow playing it makes it more difficult to play. When you play your hands aggressively and straightforwardly, you find yourself in less difficult situations. If you're a great reader of cards like Phil is, you can play his hands slowly because you know later you're not necessarily destined to lose everything. Where maybe an amateur or a rookie would be in that same situation with the two aces and be like, well, I have to call and not know what he might know or Howard or any of these great players here.
The key thing to remember is that there has to be a very specific reason to slow play. You just don't slow play because you've got a great hand. You slow play because you believe that your opponent has to catch up a little bit to put any more chips into the pot. If that's not the case...
Or because you figure your opponent's going to try to bluff you
okay,
all the time.
Exactly.
But it's for a specific reason. You don't slow play automatically because you have a great hand.
Do you have to have a certain personality, Cloney, in order to do this? A certain temperament as well?
No, I think there's a time that every player, even aggressive players, need to kick back a bit and slow play a hand. You want, and you have to know your player before you can slow play a hand. You've got to know, like Phil and them have said, that they're on a draw and they need to catch up with you. And then that way, if you put them on that draw, then you can get away from the hand too if they do, like Phil often does.
And to Cloney's point, especially an aggressive player.
I was just going to say that exact same thing.
Yeah, especially an aggressive player ought to slow play a hand every once in a while.
I was going to say exactly that
because they're
because
going to hang themselves.
when they, so many people coin aggressive players as being straightforward. They always bet. So when they check, they figure, well, they have nothing. So it's important to change gears. On the same token, you don't want to be that player that's always betting with nothing and then slow playing when you have a big hand. The key is to mix it up. Slow playing, playing fast, playing all these different situations differently.
I actually got in trouble in that situation with Ted Forrest on in the Win tournament because we had checked down a lot of hands together, and the hand that I went out on, you know, I really got in trouble with him. I figured that he was going to mix up his play a little bit, and he makes a bet, and I hung myself.
I play slow and not very well.
Yeah,
just to let you know.
I mean, one of the most suspicious things in poker is when an aggressive player like raises before the flop, you call, you're out of position, and then the flop comes and you check and they check.
It's like, uh-oh.
And there are a lot of
Signal.
players where when they check in that spot, you know they
When a
got
good
big
player calls a good sized bet out of position.